Welcome to the session, where we take the source material you've shared and extract the essential historical, cultural, and logistical knowledge, ensuring you walk away with a thorough understanding of the material.
Our focus today is on examining a film that recently received really the highest honor of cultural recognition in the United States.
And that's selection for preservation in the National Film Registry.
Exactly. The film is the 1990 holiday comedy Home Alone.
And that selection by the Library of Congress, which happened in 2023, it's not just an award, is it?
No, it's much more than that. It signifies that the film is now considered culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. It elevates what some critics, initially dismissed as just simple entertainment into a permanent part of the American cinematic record.
Right. So we aren't here to just walk through the plot.
Not at all. We're here to investigate the really surprising story of how this Christmas picture became such a global phenomenon, and I guess why its preservation became necessary 3 decades after it came out.
Okay, so let's unpack this mission. The journey this film took, from just a simple thought to its canonization, it's fascinating. It's filled with these, creative and financial battles.
It really is.
We're going to explore the surprising, almost accidental development process, tracing that initial idea from John Hughes' mind to the screen. And we'll get into the unique production challenges, the intense physical commitment from the cast and crew.
And some of it was genuinely dangerous.
And of course, the staggering, record-breaking financial success that followed.
And critically, we have to explore its enduring global legacy. Because in certain parts of the world, like Eastern Europe, this movie became more than entertainment. It became a genuine, indispensable national Christmas tradition.
Which gives it a cultural weight that you just don't see with most American comedies.
Exactly. It's a case study in how a film's audience, over time, dictates its historical importance. It doesn't matter what the initial budget drama was or what the critics first said.
So let's start at the very beginning with the accidental genesis of the idea. When we talk about writer and producer John Hughes, you usually think of these very meticulously crafted screenplays that really defined the 1980s.
Right, the teen dramas.
Exactly. But the core concept for Home Alone came from something much more mundane.
It came from him preparing for a vacation.
It's as simple as that.
That really is the kernel of this story. Hughes was meticulous about planning his family trips, and he later recounted that the idea just hit him while he was doing that classic pre-vacation check.
Making a list.
Making a list of everything he absolutely could not forget. And in that moment of, heightened parental anxiety, the hypothetical question just popped into his head, well, I better not forget my 10-year-old son.
And that immediately led to the core premise of the film.
Right. What if I left my 10-year-old son at home? What would he do? It was just a simple, very relatable flash of anxiety that he turned into this high-concept premise.
And from that one flash, he generated an 8-page document of notes that contained the entire blueprint of the story.
Yes, it wasn't a full script at first, not with dialogue. It was a detailed narrative structure. It just shows his innate sense of commercial storytelling.
And he didn't just focus on the kid being alone. He immediately brought in the conflict.
Right. Hughes understood that for a child left alone, the most immediate external fear isn't just loneliness. It's the presence of external threats.
The fear of the outside world.
Exactly. So he instinctively integrated the idea of robbers, the antagonists, which set the whole thing up not just as a domestic comedy, but as a kind of mini home invasion thriller, but designed entirely from a child's perspective.
The innocence of the child defending his home against these scary adults, that's what really sets the tone for the cartoonish violence to come.
It does, but this is where the story gets really tense. That brilliant premise. It almost died before a single frame was even shot.
All because of a massive financial disagreement.
A huge one. The film was initially set up with Warner Bros., and John Hughes promised them he could deliver the entire picture for a budget under $10 million.
And that number, under $10 million, that was the key, wasn't it?
It was crucial. It was meant to position the film as a low-risk, high-concept comedy for the holidays. But the problem started almost immediately.
The budget started to swell.
As soon as pre-production began, it ballooned. It rapidly grew to $14.7 million. And Warner Bros. Saw this escalation, especially for a comedy with a child star, as, financially irresponsible.
They didn't just express concern, though. They actively tried to force the costs down.
Oh, absolutely. Warner Bros. Demanded that the producers cut $1.2 million immediately. The producers pushed back. They wrote memos arguing they couldn't do it without compromising the quality of the production.
And the studio's response?
It was swift and total. The sources confirm Warner Bros. Shut down the production the very next day. It was a massive vote of no confidence in what would become one of the most successful films in history.
To just suddenly halt production on a project that size is a nightmare for everyone involved. But the sources say John Hughes had a fallback plan.
A very savvy one. And this is where you see Hughes operating as a major Hollywood player. He anticipated the studio's inflexibility.
He was already talking to someone else.
The sources revealed that long before the shutdown, Hughes had held a secret meeting with executives at 20th Century Fox. He was basically courting a competitor, making sure he had an escape route.
So when Warner Bros. Pulled the plug,
Hughes made sure a copy of the script was clandestinely delivered to Fox. And this was a critical step because normally legal restrictions would prevent a rival studio from even looking at a script attached to another distributor.
and Fox saw the potential.
They did. They saw the potential and maybe an opportunity to poach a major project, so they immediately resumed the entire production under their banner. The final budget, by the way, eventually climbed even higher.
How much higher?
It settled at $18 million.
So Warner Bros. Killed it at 14.7, and Fox picked it up and spent almost $4 million more.
It was a huge financial gamble, but it shows the faith Fox placed in Hughes' vision that Warner Bros. Just lacked. And of course, that gamble paid off astronomically.
Now let's talk about the directorial shift, which added another layer of complexity. Chris Columbus came on board, but he was just coming off a really difficult experience on a different Christmas film.
Yes, Columbus had initially been attached to direct National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, which was another Hughes production.
Right, that was set to release the year before Home Alone.
But he left that project before filming. The sources point to a reported personality clash with the star, Chevy Chase. Columbus described the experience as incredibly difficult, saying Chase treated him poorly. The quote was specifically, like dirt.
So when Hughes offered him 2 subsequent scripts, Home Alone must have seemed like a welcome change of pace.
You have to imagine so. Hughes offered him Home Alone and another project called Reach the Rock. Columbus chose Home Alone specifically because of its humor and the strong Christmas theme.
There's a certain irony there, leaving one Hughes Christmas comedy only to direct another even more successful one.
It's a wonderful historical footnote, and Columbus wasn't just a director for hire here. He also provided an uncredited rewrite that added this crucial emotional depth to the story.
The part that really distinguishes it from just pure slapstick.
Absolutely vital. His key contribution was centered on the character of Old Man Marley, the seemingly frightening neighbor across the street.
In the original version, he was just sort of a background figure.
Reportedly, yes, just a mysterious, spooky guy. Columbus decided to flesh him out, integrating a backstory about a serious family estrangement.
And why was that backstory so critical to the film's success?
Well, it served a dual purpose. Structurally, it gave the story a more serious, mature dimension, which balanced out all the cartoon violence that dominates the final act.
And emotionally?
Emotionally, it allowed for that beautiful resolution scene in the church. Kevin and Marley share this moment of connection where Kevin, in his own isolation, is able to offer advice about family and forgiveness.
Which leads directly to Marley reconciling with his estranged son.
And meeting his granddaughter for the first time on Christmas morning. Without that emotional core, the film is just a series of elaborate traps. With it, it becomes a genuine holiday story about family and belonging.
That structural choice, that emotional anchor of Old Man Marley, it really did set the stage for its enduring legacy. It's a great example of how small creative changes can have monumental cultural effects. Moving into the physical production, the film's success really hinged entirely on the casting, starting with the young star, Macaulay Culkin.
Right, and while John Hughes had him in mind from the beginning because of their work together on Uncle Buck, the director, Chris Columbus, he initially resisted just accepting that suggestion.
He felt he had to do his due diligence.
He felt a deep sense of directorial responsibility, as the sources describe it. He wanted to perform a comprehensive search for the perfect young actor, so he met with over 200 other actors to make sure Culkin was, without a doubt, the best fit for Kevin McAllister.
That extensive search is pretty typical for finding a child lead, but it also produced some interesting what-ifs in comedy history.
It did. The sources mention that comedian John Mulaney, who is obviously very famous now, was one of the many young actors scouted for the role.
But his parents said no.
Reportedly, yes, his parents refused the audition opportunity. And after all that due diligence, Columbus circled back and agreed that Culkin just had that specific charm, that timing and vulnerability the role required.
And that decision launched a career trajectory that few child stars ever achieve. The financial jump between the first film and the sequel really illustrates the sheer magnitude of Home Alone's box office power.
The contrast is truly stark. It really highlights the immediate celebrity status Culkin achieved. For the original Home Alone, he was paid $110,000.
Which was a solid rate for a child lead at the time.
Very solid. But once the film became the highest-grossing comedy ever, his salary for the sequel, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, it just skyrocketed.
How much?
An astonishing $4.5 million.
Wow.
That is an almost 40-fold increase. It cemented him as the most commercially valuable child actor in the world at that moment.
Now, the casting of the two robbers, the wet bandits, Harry and Marv, that relied on getting veteran actors who could bring intensity but also physical comedy to what were essentially cartoon roles.
And the production faced some early hurdles there, especially for the role of Harry. The sources note that both Robert De Niro and Jon Lovitz were offered the role.
And they both turned it down.
Both turned it down before Joe Pesci, a highly acclaimed dramatic actor, accepted the part. And Pesci's presence immediately lent this kind of serious, intense menace to the robbers, which made their eventual humiliation even funnier.
What's fascinating, though, is Pesci's dedication to maintaining that adversarial dynamic, even off-camera. I mean, it's a method acting approach you don't typically associate with a slapstick family comedy.
He was completely committed. Pesci mentioned in a 2022 retrospective interview that he intentionally limited his interactions with young Culkin off-set.
He wanted to keep that distance.
His goal was to avoid creating any sense of friendship or rapport. He wanted to ensure that the tension between Harry and Kevin remained authentic and strong on screen. He felt it helped preserve the integrity of their relationship.
That's a high level of commitment. But the sources also reveal a much lighter, maybe slightly more diva-like demand related to his morning routine.
This anecdote perfectly illustrates the power dynamics on a major set. Despite the massive pressure and tight scheduling, which initially had a 7 a.m. call time.
Which is very early.
Very early. Joe Pesci successfully demanded that the daily call times be moved back to 9 a.m.
And his reasoning.
He wanted enough time to play 9 holes of golf before beginning work. It's a hilarious detail that just shows the leverage a major star can wield.
And both Pesci and Daniel Stern, they faced a big challenge on set that forced them into this unique, creative solution.
The prohibition against cursing.
Right, because of the child star's presence.
That was a real source of difficulty, especially for the characters they were playing and the frustration they were supposed to be feeling. Because they had to strictly refrain from using typical profanity, Pesci developed what became his signature cartoon cursing.
That menacing, garbled gibberish.
Exactly. Some critics compared it to the furious outbursts of Yosemite Sam. It was a perfect comedic compromise that made the cursing itself sound harmless and cartoonish.
But a few slip-ups did make it into the final cut, didn't they?
They did. The sources indicate 2 mild curse words accidentally made it past the editors. Daniel Stern lets out a muffled shit when his shoe falls through the pet door, and the word hell was used once or twice. But overall, the need for clean language drove a great piece of comedic invention.
Let's turn now to the logistics of the setting itself. The house is so iconic that the physical location has become a tourist attraction.
The famous house at 671 Lincoln Avenue in Winnetka, Illinois, it's instantly recognizable.
But the film is heavily reliant on illusion.
Heavily. The Winnetka house is, without a doubt, a landmark. All the exterior shots, the views of the neighborhood, the snow-covered facade were filmed on location.
But for the interiors.
To accommodate the sprawling crew, the complex rigging for the traps, and just the sheer volume of equipment, the vast majority of the interiors were actually meticulously duplicated on a custom-built soundstage.
And where did they build this massive set?
It was constructed inside the gymnasium of a disused high school, the West Campus of New Trier High School. This massive facility offered the space and security they needed.
So what parts of the actual house did they use?
They only used the real Winnetka house interiors for a few key areas that were easier to film practically. The main staircase, the attic, and the first floor landing.
Everything else was the set.
Everything else. The kitchen, the flooded basement, Kevin's treehouse, the living room where most of the mayhem happens. That was all the soundstage. It just provided the freedom for the crew to rig those dangerous stunts without damaging a real home.
And the high-stakes logistics went beyond the house. That initial frantic scene where the McAllister family races through the airport, that took military precision to execute.
That scene, which is so essential for establishing the chaos, was a massive undertaking at O'Hare International Airport. Senna Moses, who played one of the family members, recounted that the short scene took several full days to film.
Days for just that one sequence.
Days. It involved securing and choreographing thousands of expertly managed extras across the American Airlines terminal to make sure the main actors, who were running at full speed, remained safe. She described it as high risk because the timing had to be absolutely perfect to avoid any serious accidents.
This brings us to the most defining and maybe ethically challenging part of the production, the intense commitment to practical effects and dangerous stunt work.
This is a crucial distinction between 1990 filmmaking and modern techniques. Troy Brown, who was Joe Pesci's stunt double, and Leon Delaney, who doubled Daniel Stern, they performed the final high-impact stunts.
Like falling downstairs, getting hit by paint cans.
All of it. And they did it without safety harnesses.
Why the decision to eliminate harnesses? I mean, given the known dangers.
The sources confirm the harnesses would have been visible on camera. It would have ruined the visual comedic effect of the raw impact.
So the director was just watching this unfold.
Director Chris Columbus admitted the stress of it. He said that after filming some of the most dramatic falls, he'd be genuinely worried and would just pray that the guys were alive. It's a high-risk commitment that provides a real counterpoint to the film's lighthearted tone. We're laughing at actions that required immense physical courage.
And those dangers weren't just for the stuntmen. Macaulay Culkin actually sustained a real injury.
Yes. He still has a scar on his finger from the rehearsal for the scene where Harry tries to bite his finger. Joe Pesci, in his commitment to the character, accidentally bit him hard enough to draw blood.
It's a small detail, but it emphasizes the physical tension on that set.
It does. And of course, there's the famous scene where Daniel Stern had a real tarantula placed on his face. He was reportedly allowed only one take for that scene because of the danger and unpredictability of the spider.
We absolutely cannot overlook the contribution of John Candy. His role as Gus Polinski, the polka band member, is so crucial for the mother's journey home.
And that entire segment was essentially a massive favor.
It was an incredible act of generosity to John Hughes. Candy was available for only one single day. And that one day turned into an intense, grueling 23-hour shoot.
And despite that commitment and the essential role he played, he was paid only $414 for his work.
But the real historical gold in that contribution is the dialogue itself.
Absolutely. The sources confirm that Hughes gave Candy a rare luxury, complete freedom to improvise. He trusted Candy's comedic genius completely.
So everything he says,
every piece of dialogue we hear from Gus Polinski, from his rambling stories about the polka circuit to his philosophical musings on travel, it was all entirely unscripted. It's a vital, memorable performance that was secured through sheer goodwill.
Before we move on, let's spend a moment on the very specific film within a film, Angels with Filthy Souls. It's such a perfect piece of cinematic trickery.
It's an excellent example of meticulous technical pastiche. The clip is only about a minute long, and it was designed to parody the classic 1938 crime film Angels with Dirty Faces.
And they went to great lengths to make it look authentic.
They did. The sequence was shot in a single day before the rest of principal photography even began. The crew used black and white negative film stock and carefully selected 1940s-era props to ensure complete authenticity.
And there's a great production note about the two gangster actors, Johnny and Snakes.
Their roles had to be switched. Ralph Foodie was originally cast as Snakes and Michael Guido as Johnny. But Foodie had just had knee replacement surgery and couldn't perform the death scene where Snakes dramatically drops to his knees.
So they swapped roles.
They swapped roles, which meant Ralph Foodie, as Johnny, got to deliver the now iconic lines, including the famous retort, "Keep the change, you filthy animal."
Now we arrive at the financial story, which is just this historical anomaly that cemented the film's initial cultural reach. Against that contentious $18 million budget, the results were, well, staggering.
The numbers are almost unbelievable. Home Alone grossed $476.7 million worldwide. But the figure that truly illustrates its cultural dominance is its staying power at the domestic box office.
It was #1 for 12 consecutive weeks.
An astonishing 12 weeks straight, from its Thanksgiving weekend release in November 1990 all the way through February of 1991.
That kind of longevity, dominating the entire holiday season and beyond, is virtually unheard of, especially for a comedy. It points to unparalleled repeat viewing and word of mouth.
That's the real story. It stayed in the top 10 highest-grossing films well past the Easter weekend. It ultimately became the top-grossing film of 1990 in North America, which is incredible considering it came out near the end of the year.
And it sold an enormous number of tickets.
Over 67.7 million tickets in the United States alone. It took nearly 9 months into its run to achieve its final domestic gross, just showing that slow, continuous stream of audiences it drew throughout 1991.
And this sustained success allowed it to hold major cinematic records for decades.
It secured a permanent spot in the Guinness World Records as the highest-grossing live-action comedy film ever. It held that title for 2 decades, only being surpassed by The Hangover Part 2 in 2011.
And its domestic record held even longer.
It did. It held the highest-grossing live-action comedy title domestically until it was finally surpassed by the cultural phenomenon Barbie in 2023. And it was the highest-grossing Christmas film until Dr. Seuss's The Grinch surpassed it in 2018. It just set the standard.
It is genuinely remarkable that a film with such overwhelming popular success met with such a mixed, even negative, critical reception at first.
It was certainly not a universal critical darling, which makes its inclusion in the National Film Registry 33 years later even more significant. The audience clearly overruled the critics.
Some of the more famous negative critiques focused on the premise being thin and the slapstick being excessive.
That's right. Karen James of the New York Times critiqued the first half as being flat and unsurprising. And then you had critics who found the level of violence gratuitous, arguing it crossed a line.
Owen Gleiberman of Entertainment Weekly famously gave it a D grade. He called it a sadistic festival of adult bashing.
That was the core of the critical resistance. The idea that the film, especially the final trap sequence, indulged in cruelty disguised as holiday cheer. Gleiberman felt John Hughes was just pulling our strings, manipulating the audience.
But the most specific critique, the one that still sparks conversation, came from the late Roger Ebert.
Right. Ebert went directly after the mechanics of the booby traps themselves. He gave the film 2.5 out of 4 stars. His central issue wasn't the violence, but the sheer implausibility.
He couldn't get past it.
He argued the premise of the abandoned child was so unbelievable that it prevented him from connecting with Kevin's plight. And he famously compared the elaborate traps to intricate Rube Goldberg machines that an 8-year-old could only devise if he had a budget of tens of thousands of dollars and the assistance of a crew of movie special effects people.
So he was highlighting the obvious cinematic fabrication.
Exactly. He was criticizing the film for asking the audience to completely suspend disbelief regarding the physics of those events.
But the sources make it clear that the film's sheer longevity and audience devotion eventually just steamrolled those early critical divisions.
Time proved to be the film's greatest advocate. Despite those early reservations, it gradually became a Christmas classic. Audiences held on to the elements that critics sometimes dismissed. The genuinely fantastic score by John Williams, the quotable phrases, and most importantly, the emotional resonance of key moments.
Especially that conversation with Old Man Marley in the church.
That provided the film's crucial heart. And its quality, despite the division, did garner significant formal recognition.
For the music and the acting.
Indeed. Macaulay Culkin's performance won him Best Young Actor at the Youth in Film Awards and Funniest Actor at the American Comedy Awards. And John Williams' score received 2 Academy Award nominations, one for Best Original Score and another for Best Original Song.
Which shows that even amidst the debate over the slapstick, the film was operating at a very high level of craft. Shifting now to its global footprint. One of the most remarkable aspects of Home Alone's legacy is how it became this mandatory, deeply entrenched cultural tradition in certain parts of the world, specifically Poland.
The status of the film in Poland is entirely unique and profoundly historical. It's not just a popular Christmas movie there. It's a national cultural phenomenon.
And that's largely because of the specific timing of its release.
Exactly. Home Alone was one of the first major, highly visible Western movies to be broadly released in Poland after the collapse of communist rule. For many, it symbolized a new era of access to global culture and entertainment.
That timing seems to have infused the movie with a symbolic importance that goes far beyond its plot.
Absolutely. The idea of the small individual, the child, using cunning and resourcefulness to defeat these large, imposing, yet sort of inept adult adversaries. Well, that resonates deeply with narratives common in post-totalitarian societies.
The triumph of the clever underdog.
Right. That narrative, combined with the sheer novelty of a Hollywood blockbuster, made it a foundational shared cultural experience for a generation.
And the devotion of the Polish audience is so absolute that they actively intervene to protect the tradition.
That is the key piece of evidence. In 2010, the Polish television channel Polsat decided not to air the film on Christmas Eve. The audience reaction was immediate and overwhelming.
How many people protested?
Over 90,000 people organized on Facebook to protest the programming decision. The public outcry was so intense that the station was forced to reverse course.
And the viewership data confirms this isn't just a vocal minority.
No, in 2018, for example, 4.51 million Poles tuned in to watch the film on Christmas Eve. The figures consistently place it among the highest-rated broadcasts of the year.
The channel, Polsat, has now fully embraced this cultural mandate.
They have. The TV trailers now acknowledge the audience's devotion with the tagline, "Christmas without him, it's absolutely impossible." It shows the network recognizes the film isn't just content anymore, but a public service.
Beyond its geographic dominance, Home Alone has had a massive postmodern legacy, spawning sequels and constant parodies that continue to explore and deconstruct the central characters.
The immediate success led to the high-profile sequel, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, which brought back the main cast and director. But the franchise expanded far beyond that.
Over 4 more films.
Yes, number 3 through 6. These later entries shifted away from the McAllister family, featuring new characters and casts, which really demonstrates the durability of the central premise itself.
But there was one exception, a cameo from one of the original cast members in the most recent one.
Right. Devin Raytrey, who played the bullying older brother Buzz, reprised his role as the adult Buzz in the 2021 film, Home Sweet Home Alone. It was a direct narrative link back to the original family, a clear nod to the fans.
The sources also detail some fascinating concepts for sequels that never got made.
Director Chris Columbus mentioned discussions about 2 distinct concepts. One involved an adult Kevin McAllister who has his own child. But the comedic tension would come from Harry and Marv still being obsessed with getting retaliation against him.
And the second idea was even darker.
The second, darker concept involved an adult Kevin actively seeking revenge on Harry and Marv, who had supposedly reformed their criminal ways. Both Columbus and Macaulay Culkin reportedly expressed interest in that premise.
But the studio said no.
The studio ultimately declined. They presumably wanted to maintain the lighter, family-friendly tone of the franchise.
The modern media references, though, have often taken that darker road the studio avoided, especially when Macaulay Culkin reprised the role as an adult.
His appearance in the 2015 web series DRVRS is a prime example of that. Culkin played an adult Kevin who is visibly disturbed and heavily traumatized by the events of the film.
It suggests he never really recovered?
Exactly. In the short, he resorts to his signature tactics to neutralize a gunman. And that short was so impactful that it prompted a response from Daniel Stern reprising his role as Marv. He released a video pleading for Harry's help against this adult Kevin's renewed wrath.
And while that went dark, the commercial world leveraged the same nostalgia in a much lighter way.
In 2018, Culkin reprised the role again for a big Google Assistant advertisement. It featured shot-for-shot remakes of key scenes, but modernized them by showing Kevin using the new technology to manage his house and execute his defense plan.
The film's defense tactics have also entered the cinematic language, referenced in other films, often exploring the real-life dangers of those traps that Ebert critiqued.
We saw a clear imitation in the 2022 Christmas action comedy Violent Night. A character who's a fan of Home Alone uses Kevin's tactics to fight off mercenaries.
And then there's the horror film approach.
Right. In the 2016 horror film Better Watch Out, a character uses the film to demonstrate how truly deadly the booby traps would be in real life, specifically detailing the lethal force of being hit in the face with a swinging paint can.
Finally, we have to detail the controversy surrounding the plot similarities to an earlier French film.
This is a significant part of the historical context. There were formal accusations of plagiarism involving a 1989 French horror thriller called 3615 Card Père Noël.
And the plot resemblance is undeniable.
It features a young boy, home alone, defending his house and his ailing grandfather from a brutal home invader who is dressed as Santa Claus. The timing and premise overlap created considerable friction.
What was the nature of the French director's threat?
René Manzor, the director of the French film, publicly threatened legal action, alleging that Home Alone was a direct, unauthorized remake of his work. While his film was largely unknown in the U.S. at the time, the striking similarities have always raised questions about potential inspiration, though Hughes and the production team always denied any connection. So, in summarizing the complex story of Home Alone, you see a film that was born out of a simple, fleeting question of parental anxiety in John Hughes's mind.
And its very existence was immediately tested by immense corporate budget drama, forcing that risky switch in studios.
Its ultimate triumph was secured not just by the genius of its core premise, but by that vital emotional rewrite from Chris Columbus, particularly the inclusion of Old Man Marley.
And the execution of that vision required this astonishing dedication. From the director meeting 200 actors, to Joe Pesci method acting his antagonism, to the stuntmen performing genuine, dangerous practical effects without safety equipment to ensure the comedic illusion was perfect.
Ultimately, this film, which initially received a mixed critical reception, has been formally canonized. Not by critics, but by the sheer, overwhelming, worldwide audience devotion that propelled it to unprecedented success and cemented it as a shared cultural monument, particularly in countries like Poland.
What stands out when reviewing all this source material is the sheer generosity and collaborative spirit that often dictates these monumental cinematic achievements. Reflect for a moment on the role John Candy played in this success. He provided a crucial emotional and logistical lift to the entire story, working for nearly a full day, a grueling 23-hour shoot for minimal pay, simply as a favor to Hughes. He improvised all of his material, securing a truly vital piece of the film's heart and humor. How often in film history is such a critical, unforgettable element, a character who provides essential comedic genius and emotional relief, secured by the sheer goodwill and generosity of one actor doing favor for a friend? That is a profound question to consider regarding the creation of lasting art. Thanks for listening.